Hello everyone, welcome back to our TOEFL iBT speaking series. In this video, we will focus on the two independent tasks, tasks 1 and 2.
Okay, so I'd like to start by talking a little bit about the structure of the first two tasks. We've talked about this when we introduced the TOEFL iBT speaking section overall, but I'd just like to remind you that the two first tasks are the independent tasks, and for each task you get 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to answer. Overall, this is actually not a lot of time, particularly in terms of the preparation. You won't have time to take detailed notes. So make sure you know what 15 seconds feels like in your preparation and know how much you can say in 45 seconds. So task 1 is the open choice, the personal choice, which means you get to make your own decision, while task 2 is the limited choice, or sometimes it's a paired choice or 3 choices. For both of the tasks, you'll need to give some specific details, and we'll look at some specific examples. So task 1, like I said, it's open choice, and so it deals with some general knowledge or some personal experiences or preferences. Overall, nothing too specific that you need to worry about. As long as you can understand and answer questions about daily life and daily experiences, you'll be fine. This is the easiest task, so it's a good idea to try to score this perfectly to the best of your ability. So let's start with an example of a task 1 question. Name a book that deeply influenced you and explain why. Include specific details in your response. So the question asks almost always 2 things. First, you need to give a main idea, a main response, and it will ask you to detail your reasons, detail some additional points to support this main idea. And it's really important that the details matter a great deal. You will be judged not only by how clearly you articulate the main idea, but also by how well you explain your reasoning. So I have a few tips for you with regard to task 1. I suggest a structure like this. Of course, you can alternate the structure depending on what you prefer, but I think this is a good structure overall. State your main answer at the very beginning. Give 1 to 2 descriptive details, and then give 2 reasons, each with 2 details, 1 to 2 details, and then finish, close out your answer. It's important also that when you are considering your answer, not just when you're actually answering it, but in your preparation, that you think about it in this structure. My suggestion for you is that you say the first thing that comes to mind. Don't waste time hesitating. Don't debate with yourself over 2 or 3 different possibilities. Whatever comes to mind first, that should be your main answer. I want to detail the scoring of task 1, not just task 1, but both independent tasks. You will be graded on your delivery, which is, of course, your intonation and stress, your pronunciation and flow, and whether you are easily understandable. You will be graded on your language use, which is, of course, your grammar, your vocabulary, how well you choose your words, and your topic development. So whether you have a clear main idea, you have sufficient reasons, coherent progression, whether your length is appropriate, and whether the content is suitable. So make sure that you fulfill all of these things, and I've tried my best to give an example of answers later that fit all of these criteria. Okay, so for the first question, I've listed out a sample answer. I suggest that the first time you try to answer the question, you record yourself just with your notes. You can have some extra time to prepare, but make sure that you practice talking through your points first, and then you can type up a more complete answer and then practice that, but always practice without a specific detailed transcript. Okay, so for me, a book that influenced me deeply is a novel by American writer Willa Cather called My Antonia. It is about immigrants who went from Europe to America. It is set in the late 19th century. It has deeply influenced me because it is a beautiful story about love and hardship, about growing up, and about the power and beauty of the American landscape, particularly the Nebraskan prairies and frontiers. It has taught me a lot about life, love, and perseverance. Okay, of course you can have some pauses, short pauses in your answer. This is particularly a little bit longer, I think. I'd have to go quite quickly. But notice how it starts with the main idea, how the supporting details are given, and notice how it closes out, I think, with the important supporting details. Okay, so this is my proposed structure for all of the questions that will appear in task 1. So again, notice that main idea comes first, and add a detailed description using a sentence. 2 reasons, I think, are good. More than 1 is best. And you can repeat the same structure. So notice that in my answer I used a lot of it is, I feel, etc. You can repeat the same structures, and they can be short. They don't have to be really, really complex sentences. And remember that when you are taking the notes, you won't have time to list all of the main details. Think about your answer and then just list the details. So remember, you will not forget what your main idea is. So focus on the details and reasons in the 15 seconds. And when you are writing your notes, use keywords and phrases. Practice using some abbreviations. There is no time for you to consider more complicated ideas. Okay, so let's do another one. What is one of your favorite school subjects or courses you have taken? Explain why it is one of your favorites with specific details and examples. So, one of my favorite subjects was math. I really liked math because I like solving problems and I thought math problems were fun. Also, I had a very nice math teacher in high school. He was always funny and patient, and I learned a lot from him. Specifically, I really liked algebra, trigonometry, and statistics, and I still use statistics now in my work. So overall, math was one of my favorite school subjects. Okay, so notice that there are some transition words like overall, furthermore, etc. Try to avoid pauses or filler words. This takes practice, particularly in an exam like this, a test like this. It's good to be aware of the pauses that you have, and practice overcoming those as best as you can. We can't eliminate them completely. Certainly, I still use pauses and filler words, but for the purpose of the test, it's good to practice. Remember that before you answer, you have a chance. So take a deep breath. Don't rush. Pace yourself. And practice with many different questions and keep a record of all your responses. So what about task 2? Task 2 is limited choice. And so you have to make a decision on which side you stand. You need to give an opinion, basically. It is slightly more difficult than task 1 because you need to come up with reasoning, I think, that is more abstract, less personal. But you can still base it, I think, on your personal experience. It's just the reasoning is slightly more complicated. For example, some people prefer to live in the city while others prefer to live in the countryside. Which do you prefer and why? Support your answer with details. So notice you need to give reasons for why people would prefer to live either in the countryside or in the city. And that can be a little bit more complicated, a little bit more abstract. Again, I have some tips for the limited choice second task. First, don't hesitate. Go with your first reaction. And always take a stance. Make a choice, stick to it. Sometimes students try to negotiate both sides. That's not the best idea. You only have 45 seconds. The point is whether you can make a decision and take a stance and give reasoning. So whether you truly agree or not, it's best just to take a stance. The structure for this kind of response, I would suggest, is to state your choice. That's your main idea. Give two reasons and give it a little bit of support. You can concede a point, which means you can consider the other side or other two sides and give some reasoning. However, you need to return to the main point. You don't necessarily have to concede a point, but the best answers do. They show some consideration. So again, remember that you will not forget your choice, right? You won't forget your main idea. So when you are taking notes, detail the reasons. Detail the three reasons. So the two reasons to support and one reason to concede. So for a sample answer, this is what I would say. I would prefer to live in the city. Living in the city is better for me because it is more convenient and there are more cultural activities. I also love museums and there are more of them in the city. I also love visiting bookstores, cafes, the cinema, and different neighborhoods. The countryside is quiet and beautiful, but I can go there on vacation. So overall, I would prefer to live in the city. Sometimes you won't necessarily have to use all 45 seconds. Make sure that you have significantly answered to the best of your ability in the structure. And so if you finish in 35 seconds or 40 seconds, that's also okay. And even if you get cut off, your last sentence gets cut off, that's also okay because you've stated the main points and given your reasons. But again, try your best to get a feel for what 45 seconds feels like. So here are some suggestions for practice, specifically the two independent tasks. Again, I can't stress this enough. Put yourself under time pressure. When you are starting to practice, of course, when you're trying to practice coming up with reasoning, reasons and details, you can give yourself some more time. But when you're actually practicing the 45 seconds, make sure that you have time pressure. Get a good feeling for how much you can say, how you should pace yourself in the 1 minute, 15 plus 45 seconds. Practice many different topics. There are many online. You can find them. You can use our library resources as well. But try to practice as many different topics as possible and track your answers. Repeat them multiple times and work on improving your responses over time.
In the next video, video 5, we will talk about the two integrated tasks that you have to deal with regard to the campus situations. So stay tuned.